To close today's session, we will conclude with Mark Ostach. Mark helps people to find the courage to connect with themselves, their purpose, and with the people in their lives, both online and offline. Mark's goal is to restore energy and focus to organizations battling modern life's non-stop pace and growing sense of disconnection. A nationally recognized speaker on digital wellness, Mark has delivered 2 TED Talks and spoken to thousands of people all over the country, encouraging them to embrace a culture of digital well-being. Let's get ready to be inspired by Mark Ostach.
Rosalie, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I am Mark Ostach. I'm here in Detroit, Michigan in USA, and I'm so grateful to be here to bring a session around courage and connection and even ways to disconnect in our 2021 year full of digital technologies and innovations and our hybrid workforces. It's ever so important that we find spaces that we can create healthy boundaries with our devices, so that way we can not have things like burnout or Zoom or video meeting fatigue and so much more that we're going to unpack today. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and I am ready to get going. So before I jump into the message, I have a quick question for you all. I want to get a gauge on the digital habits that you all engage in. So let's just start with this. In the chat box or in your mind, I want you to answer the following questions. Do you have a smartphone? You can put it in this chat box, yes or no. If you have your Thermo Fisher pom-pom, you can shake that around. But if you have a smartphone, let me know, yes or no. Okay, now most of you do. If you check your phone as soon as you wake up in the morning, let me know, yes or no. What about checking your phone right before you go to bed? Okay, most of you still do that. How many of you take your phone and check it while going to the bathroom? All right, that's what I thought. Probably half of you, maybe a few of you aren't exactly being honest with me this morning, but nevertheless, this is a good way to get some digital habits from you all. And lastly, how many of you have written a poem about your phone? I don't see anybody. Well, I have, and I'd like to share a poem with you entitled Disconnect Me Through Spoken Word. Here we go. Every morning when I wake, my phone goes straight up to my face like makeup, making me disgraced, 'cause it covers all my time alone. But it's loneliness I feel. But online I can't be that real, 'cause I gotta show my best face, my best case, and all my goals and accolades. But checking in means checking out to what this life is all about. Face to face and holding hands and hanging outside with your friends. So listen to these words I state and make them yours and yours to break. Say them with me, say them loud. Grab your phones out and sing out proud. Disconnect me. Oh, disconnect me. Take my phone and shut it down. I plead these words. I plead them now. Disconnect me. And there's my grand bow for everybody. Some snaps in the chat box. Thank you so much for letting me just start this with a little bit of lighthearted levity for today. If you could please launch the slides, I will get into the core message around courage to connect. So thank you so much. Here's why we're here today. I learned so much coming up to this event about your organization, the innovations, technologies, and the science behind Thermo Fisher, and the wonderful work you're doing, as we just saw in the earlier PBS video. Sciencey is exactly the word that I use to describe to my children. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they help me with learning, leading, and living from home. And I also learned a lot about the connections that required in the microscope to do the wondrous things that your innovations do. Now, I wanted today to talk about the connections that we have and the human connections and the way that our virtual hybrid workforces are beginning to change the way that we engage. And I know intensity is a core value of Thermo Fisher. Well, the intensity in our human connections and the way we care for ourselves needs to be approached at the similar intensity. So to that end, here are the goals for today's message. You see them on the screen. We want to encourage digital wellness. This message is not about anti-technology, nor is it about feeling guilty about your current device habits. It's just a conversation. How do we begin to raise our awareness globally about how our devices impact our minds, our bodies, and our spirits? We're going to be in community and have a little fun. We're going to talk about ways that we can reduce burnout, and we're going to keep going on. So to that end, here's a picture of my family. I just mentioned kind of who I was professionally, but who I am personally. I'm a father first. I'm a husband, and this is like my social media Instagram photo that represents the life that I hope you see kind of in the edited way. But truth be told, this is how I really feel during the quarantine and the lockdown. Like Santa Claus is the quarantine. I am my son. I am desperate to get out and be in the outside world and serve customers and be at client sites and do things that I know create that client intimacy or that human connection when we're out of our home offices. So that's me personally kind of dealing with that. I had a pre-survey. Over 500 of you responded to this survey, and this was a way for me to get a gauge on what is the emotional health and digital health that you're experiencing here in 2021. So as I asked, what's one word to describe how you're feeling? There's a range of words from overwhelmed to busy to grateful to content to exhausted to excited. All of these words represent the emotions that your organization feels within the moment, and it's just a sample, and it's just to show us that we need to be more mindful of how we're approaching our virtual calls and our connections. There are another few things around emotional health. You see the data on the screen, everything from perfectly doing fine to barely able to get out of bed, and some days it's hard. So that's the data back to you all. We talked about how are you dealing with your emotions, recycling them, repressing them, or releasing them. We're going to talk through some great ways that your peers and colleagues are releasing their emotions and reducing burnout a little bit later on. And then lastly, how many video calls have you been on the past 2 weeks? Again, some of you have more intense video conference schedules. Some of you have less. Wherever this message finds you at today, we need to remember for movement and fresh air in between our video sessions. So to that end, I did have a chance to have some one-on-one interviews. I talked to a dozen different leaders within the organization, and I talked to them about what do you do to manage your emotional and mental health, and how do you reduce burnout? So here's just a few samples of what I found. Before I share those images, I learned a lot about the competency framework, but most important, I learned about these 4 I values: integrity, innovation, involvement, and intensity. We're going to add a 5th one today, that's intentionality. I hope this is okay with your CEO. So for purposes of today, intentionality is going to be the 5th I value. And I believe that intentionality is key to caring for ourselves, having the courage to connect with what we need, and reducing burnout and speaking clearly to our coworkers and our peers as we manage the virtual and hybrid future of Thermo Fisher and all the exciting, innovative things that you have ahead of you this year. So to that end, as a liberal arts, I studied psychology and neuroscience, and then I went on for a degree in technology, and I learned the word TEM means transition electron microscope, which was great for me to hear. Today, I'd like it to stand for TEM, time encouraged for me. So we're going to look at some of the ways that your fellow leaders and peers had time encouraged for them. So how do you reduce burnout? You start by talking through a simple acronym. You can take a picture of this, you can write it down. It's very simple, and it's HALT. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? If you're feeling hungry or hangry, as we call it in the US, lonely, angry, or tired, that's a great chance for you to pause and reset and restore. So here's some examples of how your peers are restoring, resetting, and recalibrating themselves so that they can show up and be the best version of who they are. So here we have the infamous Rosalie, Queen Rosalie the First, as I like to call her, as so does Matt. But Rosalie likes to have tea. She likes to go outside camping or hiking, and it's a great way to get fresh air. We've got another great strategy that she shared with me: time blocking on your calendar. Put that red block of time that you know is for you, so that way you can step aside from the Zoom calls or the Teams calls or whatever you find your calendar being filled with, and make sure that you have time encouraged for you, even if it's a half an hour to eat lunch or 15 minutes to go outside on a walk and get some fresh air. So time blocking on the calendar is a great strategy. Thanks, Rosalie, for sharing that. Here is Matt. Yes, Matt likes to ski and to bike. Now, all of these are great adventures, and sometimes they're hard to find in the calendar. But when Matt finds time to do this, he comes back recalibrated, recharged, and ready to be creative and collaborative. And then here's another picture of Mingqi. She likes to listen to Chinese history from her phone. So she'll lay down on her couch, she'll take a deep breath, shut her eyes, and listen to Chinese history. That's a way that she gets calm and collected and restored. We also have Arnold. He likes to go outside in the fresh air, hiking in California, as well as playing tennis with his son. Great activities that help reduce that kind of burnout that can happen in our mind and give himself permission to get outside. And then Jeannie, I should say, on the HR side, she likes to get outside also and attempt some fishing or be outside with her family. That is from a recent Halloween when they dressed up all together. And lastly, here's Sebastian. Sebastian likes to get outside, have some adventures with his family, and just be free and even have a glass of wine. It's good to have a glass of wine every now and again. And then lastly, here's my family. This is our snow family. We like to go outside in Michigan. It's freezing cold, and we like to have some fun together. So here's just some ways that we can do this. Now, I want to pause and I want to share a very open and honest conversation I had with Rosalie and Matt. Now, Rosalie and Matt are very close, and they were very open to this idea of burnout. And Matt shared that later this past year in 2020 in December, he reached out to Rosalie and said to her that he's really overwhelmed and feeling burnt out. And Rosalie was able to be there as a peer and as a supporter, as a fellow leader, and said, listen, I get it. I felt that way before. And her and Matt talked through some strategies and some honest conversations on what he needs to do to reduce burnout so he doesn't run himself to the ground. So it's really important that we begin to have these conversations, and I appreciate the candor and the openness that Matt and Rosalie shared with me. And then lastly, this is them from the beginning of the GCM conference, just enjoying an orange juice, maybe with some champagne in there, just celebrating you all and this conference, knowing that this is a great way that we've adapted to change, come together virtually, and are continuing to deepen our learning on ways that we can maintain that intensity, but also maintain that intensity in how we care for ourselves. Permission is the key word. If there's one word that we want you to remember, it's you have to have the permission to care for yourselves. And in order to do that, you need to work through things like time blocking on your schedule or finding time to even get outside and have some fresh air. So permission is key. So as we move on to this idea of courage to connect, I want to talk through what the word courage means and what the word connection means. So the word courage comes from the Latin word cor, and it means heart. So courage, in its original definition, means to share your heart with those around you. And I believe, especially in the virtual landscape that we find ourselves living, leading, and learning in, it's ever more important that we share courage in the connections that we hold virtually, so that way we can bring back that human connection that we all desperately need. So I'd like to model an exercise of a way that I have been encouraging people all over the globe to begin to connect with courage. And it's through an exercise called If You Really Knew Me. So here's how it works. It's a game of vulnerability. And you can share things that are spicy or mild or medium in nature. I'll model this for you so you have an idea. And my challenge to you is to practice this some point in the next month. So if you really knew me, you would know that I have an Irish twin sister, which just means that we are a year and 10 days apart. If you really knew me, you'd know that I start every morning with 2 cups of black coffee. If you really knew me, you'd know that in the winters, I experience depression. If you really knew me, you'd know that my 6-year-old son and I have not been getting along. If you really knew me, you would know that I surprised my wife and sang her my wedding vows on our wedding day. I'm not going to sing for you today. And if you really knew me, you'd know that I'm a big Kenny G fan, the artist. the saxophone player. So that's how the exercise know. You share statements that reveal insights into who you are to help others have a more common connection with you. So again, I'd encourage you to try, if you really knew me, as an exercise, maybe in your next one-on-one meeting with your boss or your fellow leader. But moving on, I did mention that Kenny G, I am a huge fan of Kenny G. And I'd like to share a story with you today called A Night to Remember. Now, this story is about my father and I. Here is a picture of my father and I all the way back in the 1980s. He was probably my age now, in his 30s, and I was just a 2-year-old kid on his back. We just got done mowing the grass. We're outside in the summer. I can smell the gasoline from the lawnmower. I can feel my father's skin as I rest as a 2-year-old on his back, and I can remember that moment vividly. Well, fast forward to this moment. This was 2 years ago at a concert where we got a chance to see Kenny G live in person. Now, this was an incredible experience because just 2 months prior, my father was in the hospital. My father was suffering from congestive heart failure. My dad was a workaholic. He didn't know how to shut it off, and he didn't care for his mental and physical health, and he became ill as a result of it. Now, thankfully, he was able to recover and make his way out of the hospital. And we found ourselves back in Detroit, Michigan at a beautiful concert venue. Now, this particular concert venue, we had a chance to go behind the scenes and meet Kenny G live in person. It was incredible. My father was so happy to see him. My dad had a new lease on life, considering he almost died 2 months earlier. And we found ourselves at this concert just high on life and so thankful to be there. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is a 10,000 person amphitheater outside, and it overlooks a river that shows boats driving by as you're listening to the music of the concert. Now, we had really good seats, so we went to the 10th row to go sit down. And the seats that we were going to sit in, we decided to actually sit in seats on the aisleway because my father didn't have a chance to kind of go all the way through 20 people into it. And we decided to test our luck. So as we're sitting there, right before the concert begins to start, the bass player came off the stage, walked directly up to my father, put a crate right in the aisleway, touched his leg and said, "You have the best seat in the house." And I'd like to show you a brief video of what happens next. This was the most incredible experience of my father and I's life. We got to see Kenny G live in person and literally be serenaded right there on the spot. Thank you so much for letting me share that story with you, because I believe that stories are a great way for us to connect. And oftentimes when our calendars are overloaded and we don't feel like we have time to create human connection, telling a story is a beautiful way that we can find human connection in a virtual world. So thank you for letting me share that story. So why digital wellness? As Rosalie mentioned in the introduction, I've had a chance to speak across the globe about how technology impacts our relationships, how the content behind the screens that we view daily from our phones and our devices impacts our thoughts and our feelings. And I want to begin to raise the conversation today about why we need to consider digital wellness as part of the culture at Thermo Fisher and in your homes and communities. So let's just look at this graph here. I know data is a really significant place to anchor ourselves in. So what we're looking at is the average 24-hour day from 2007 to 2017. Now, I want to show you something interesting. The orange on the screen represents the amount of screen time that we've used and continue to gain from 2000 to 2017. So that means that even though we've been working about the same amount of time, we've been sleeping about the same amount of time, we've been kind of cooking and cleaning in the same amount of hours throughout the day, what has changed is our screen usage, which is really important to look at because that personal time, that time away from work, is our time to practice hobbies, have a cup of tea or a glass of coffee with somebody and get to know them more. It's our chance to reflect on our day, use introspection in our mind to determine what it is we want, what it is we need to work on. And that personal time is being invaded by our screen, so we need to be very mindful of it. So whatever your why is, it might be your mental or emotional health is impacted by what you see on social media or what you read in the news. It might be your physical health from your neck being sore from too many Zoom meetings. It might be your spiritual health feeling that you are devoted to technology more than you are devoted to something higher than yourself. Whatever your why is, it's important that you look at this message through that lens. So to that end, I believe that we need to look at our past, and smoking is a great way to look at the way that smoking was adopted in the 1930s and the 1940s. Looks very similar to the way that our screen usage has been adopted over the past 15 years. So I want to share some pictures with you. These are pictures of the past. This is a picture of nurses in a hospital, inside the hospital, sharing a cigarette on their break. This is a picture of an advertisement for mothers to smoke Marlboro cigarettes. In the upper corner of that text, it says, "Mom, you better light up a cigarette before you scold me," right? We know how hard it is to be a parent, especially in the virtual world that we live in. There's doctors and dentists endorsing different types of cigarettes for you to smoke. Now we fast forward and we see things like scrolling is the new smoking. So as we scroll through our phones, it's almost the equivalent as we digest these digital calories that often leave us feeling empty or in need for another hit, so to speak. Whatever it is, the touchscreen generation is now the generation that our children are being born into. And we find ourselves, technology knows no limit, right? So as we see these things, we just have to wonder, how do we begin to embrace a culture of digital wellness? And I need to encourage you and remind you to say that it's not about being anti-technology, and it's not about making you feel guilty. Technology is a beautiful thing. We can connect like this globally and have a virtual conference where we can all be in our homes as we connect. But it's more about how do we raise our awareness of how our content makes us think and feel. So let's move into the root word of connection. The word connection at its core means to be together and unified physically. Now, this also comes from the Latin word unity. So as we look at our connections and we think about our virtual setup, our original definition of the root word connection means to be together physically, in person. So it's a bit of a far cry on how we were originally intended to be together connected. Okay, let's take a deep breath, shake it out, move around, get your pom-pom if you have one, grab your tea or your coffee. We're going to shift gears. We're going to play and exercise a fun game of true and false. Now, I'd like you to use the chat box and enter the word true or false into the chat box based on the statements I read. If you're not using the chat box, just say out loud, true or false. So let's try this. All right, here's the first question. A Dutch city installs lights on crosswalks to help distracted cell phone users cross the street safely. Is that true or false? What do we think? True or false? All right, here's the answer. It is true. Yes, there is a city in Dutch, along with other cities in Germany and throughout the globe, that are beginning to look at the way technology has get us looking down at our devices. And again, we find ourselves looking to need to innovate and create, road and infrastructure to account for people looking down at their cell phones. So the first one was true. Okay, so Kentucky Fried Chicken creates a lunchbox that allows you to charge your phone. What do you think, true or false? Okay, let's see. What do we have? What do we have? Kentucky Fried Chicken. This is true. Yes, it's called the Wada Box. It's Kentucky Fried Chicken's most innovative product since the launch of the bucket of chicken. It allows you to charge your phone while you are eating your finger-licking good chicken. I have heard that it's powered by chicken grease. Now, I'm just joking, but as scientists and engineers, you got to wonder, how does this thing actually work? And why on earth do we have this? All right, you can soften your facial features using a setting in Zoom. True or false? What do we think? True or false? Yes, the answer is true. By clicking Touch Up Your Appearance, you can soften your facial features in Zoom. Now, you can't grow back hair or you can't reverse aging, but you can soften the way you look over Zoom. Let's move on. We have a couple more questions. I do love this picture. I show it in all my messages. When your audio is off, your hair looks like that. When your audio is on, or your video, I should say, is on, you need to make sure that you're bringing your A game, your best. All right, 2 more questions. Digital hippies are a new generation that do not use smartphones. What do you think, true or false? Digital hippies are a new generation that don't use smartphones. All right, drum roll please, and the answer is false. However, I do believe that one day there'll be a generation or a subset of the culture called dippies, and they will be people that don't use smartphones, go back to peace and love, and maybe have a flip phone. So that's my future prediction. You can quote me today. All right, and the last question is, there's a new trend where you can rent a farm animal to join your virtual meetings. What do you think? Can you rent a farm animal to join your virtual meetings? Well, I'm here to say the answer is true. And from North Carolina in the United States of America is Mambo the donkey here to visit us for this event. Mambo, how are you?
He's doing great.
Everybody just get some laughter going. Shake these Thermo Fisher pom-poms. What do you have to do? We have a live donkey here just to say hi to you. Mambo, you're looking good. What do you have to say to the scientists, engineers, researchers, and leaders within Thermo Fisher Scientific?
Oh, we can say thank you for all your amazing work. That's so cool how all your equipment helped in this fight against the pandemic.
Yes, it's a wonderful. And what advice do you give the employees at the organization on ways to reduce burnout? How does Mambo reduce burnout in his life?
Well, today he was a yoga instructor. He was helping me do yoga out here while we were waiting.
And he likes to get outside for some fresh air, isn't that right?
Absolutely. It's a great day outside.
All right, well, let's give a round of applause to Mambo. Get some snaps in the chat box. Take a picture of Mambo if you'd like. Thank you so much, Mambo, for joining our meeting. You are now an official team member at Thermo Fisher Scientific for the day. So thank you so much for bringing some joy and some smiles to this session. We'll see you later, Mambo. Okay, that was fantastic. Let's get back to the slides and continue to finish our message. We have 10 minutes left, and we really want to focus on kind of turning the corner on ways that we can begin to improve our digital wellness. Now, before we do that, I want to offer up a chance again, just to stretch your arms out, move around. I want to introduce what's called 4x4 breathing or box breathing. So I'd like to invite you just for a minute to shut your eyes, put your hands in your lap, put them to the side wherever you feel comfortable. You have been wonderful attendees on a very long week of virtual meetings and conferences. So we're just going to take a moment and take a deep breath. So shut your eyes if you'd like and just follow my voice. Just take a few slow breaths. Begin to center your feet and that raise your awareness of where you're at. And as your eyes are closed, I just want to invite you to take a few deep breaths together. So slowly breathe in and exhale. Do it again. Breathe in and exhale. 2 more times on your own. And as you breathe in, just notice the way that your body begins to find rest. And as you create that space and as your heart opens up and as you feel that tension maybe or your thoughts moving, just be with them. Let's take one final breath together. Breathe in and audibly just breathe out. Okay, that was 4x4 breathing. And oftentimes we don't remember that we need to breathe. Breathing is such a precious resource, and it helps us to reset and feel less burnt out as we continue moving on in our virtual sessions. So 4x4 breathing or box breathing, that's another way to connect with courage and to improve your mind, body, and spirit as you continue on in the virtual hybrid workforce and continue to move right along. So we have a few minutes left. I want to get into the root of why does our digital health impact our emotions? Because I believe that as we saw in the data, the emotional health of the organization right now through the pandemic, through the intensity of working long hours and long meetings, through the exciting intensity of the innovations and the research and the way that you're going to serve your customers this year and beyond, all of those things impacts our emotions. And I believe our digital health is impacted by this. We find ourselves kind of scrolling through our phones. It's often referred to as doom scrolling. And doom scrolling happens when we're checking our phones in our bed or at night, and whether we're reading headlines, whether we're reading things that across the globe that indicate tension in the world, whatever we're reading and digesting, those digital calories impact how we sleep, how we feel, and how we show up to work. So I like to look at our digital calories the same way we look at our physical calories. So we wouldn't want to eat these hamburgers and donuts and Coca-Cola right before we go to bed and expect that we have a restful night's sleep, right? So instead, we want to make sure that we are being mindful of eating healthy digital calories. So I'd like to offer up to you all some ways that we can begin to embrace digital wellness, both at Thermo Fisher Scientific as well as in your homes and in your communities that you live in. So how can we do this? On the screen, you're going to see 5 ways that you can improve your digital well-being. We've got the first one, no digital gadgets at mealtime. Yes, get the phones away from the dinner table. Our meals are intended for connection, right? You have your knife, your spoon, your fork, and your phone. The last time I checked, our phones aren't good as utensils and you can't scoop them to eat your soup. So why don't we get them away from the dinner table? If you're struggling to do that, you can stack your phones at the middle of the table and you can play a game called the Phone Stack Challenge. And the first person that grabs their phone in the middle of the meal, they have to do the dishes. If you're out to eat and they do that, they've got to pick up the bill and pay for the meal for everybody. So that's a good way to incentivize the Phone Stack Challenge. 2, sleep device free, get a real alarm clock. I know many of you use your alarm clock as a phone. And sometimes when we do that, we hit snooze on our alarm clock or our phones, and then we check social media or our email, and we get those kind of digital calories that make us feel worried or anxious or stressed right off the bat. Number 3, take a digital fast for 1 hour a day. Take 1 hour and see if you can just be without technology for a moment. If you're stepping away from the workday, let your employees know, your colleagues know, hey, I'll be back online. Or put your phone on you and just be disciplined not to check it. But take a digital fast for 1 hour a day. Make eye contact when talking. I haven't had a chance to see any of you kind of in person, but I trust that the engagement and the eye contact back at me indicates that you are interested in the words that I'm speaking to you. And I appreciate that eye contact. And the last thing is end your digital day 1 hour before bed. I know this is a hard thing. We've got Netflix, we've got Amazon Prime, we have all of these things that we can do with our phones, but try to land the plane before you get into bed. So what I mean by that, if all of us have been on airplanes, I know many of you have traveled and many of you have probably enjoyed a little bit of a break from travel. But when we travel in an airplane, the airplane just doesn't land from 30,000 feet in the air down to the ground. The airplane has to ease into the runway and land down safely on the runway. And the same thing is important for us. We need to ease ourselves into bed and rest. And when we're on our phones checking our email before we go to bed, it is not a good thing to do. So just trust that those emails are going to be there in the morning, and know that if somebody really needs to get a hold of you, they're going to call you and your phone will ring. So those are 5 ways. My advice and encouragement to you is pick one of these ways. Pick one thing from this list and try it. Try it out for the month of March and see how you feel. See how it shifts the way that you wake up in the morning and the way you go to bed and the conversations that you're having. Lastly, I want to cover 5 ways that we learned today on how you can connect with courage with both your customers and your coworkers. So you saw it today, but especially virtually speaking, when we're in a customer-facing role, it's really difficult virtually to connect with our customers. But I've learned, and these are some of the things that I shared today, is that if you lead with positive energy, that's a great way to do that. Examples of that would be sharing a picture. I shared this picture of my little daughter. How could you not smile when you see those glasses, right? It just lifts your energy up. You can share a quote. You can share something that you're grateful for. Set the tone of that virtual session and then watch how people feel more connected to you. If you have time and it's appropriate, you can tell a story. It can be a brief story of what you did over the weekend or what you plan to do on your next vacation. Share something personal. We saw that in the game, If You Really Knew Me. It's a great exercise to share something personable. Play an activity or a virtual game. I know the true and false game was fun. Heck, you can rent a donkey to join your next one-on-one meeting or your next team celebration as you guys continue to be the market leaders in the industry. Whatever you do, make sure that you are finding ways to create a sense of play as you approach these global issues that you're solving. And the last thing is extend compassion to each other. Many of us are overwhelmed. Many of us are overworked. The intensity is real. We can channel that intensity in a way that creates the next generation of technologies and products and innovations on the way that we create customer intimacy with intensity. But we need to also be mindful of the human condition. And I believe that compassion is the key ingredient to allowing each other to deal with the current ups and downs that we're all experiencing. So as we wrap up our time together, that 5th I, you got the 4 I's, I'm adding the 5th today, be intentional. Be intentional with your time. Be intentional with communicating what you need. As you saw with Rosalie, she blocked out her calendar. It doesn't work like a perfect science every time, but it is an approach. So be intentional on how you care for you. You all are the key ingredients at the organization. And if you're not taking care of yourself, or you're not communicating how you feel, or if you're suffering from burnout, then nobody's going to know. So be intentional about the words you use and the hobbies and habits you choose to partake in when you have your personal time. And you got to take care of yourself through restoration and recalibration, the same way you service your customers through predictive analysis and your rapid technologies and D2I. You are predicting what your customers need. You need to predict what you need by taking care of what you need. So lastly, as we wrap our time up together, plan your time and courage for me. Plan it, put it on the calendar, however you have to do it, plan your time. And then lastly, I'm so grateful to be able to share a free ebook with everybody. It's a book I launched called Courage to Connect. There's going to be 2 ways that you can download this book. You can take a picture of your screen right now on the QR code, and that QR code will take you to a link where you can download the book. So you can do that now. And then Emily will also share in the chat box a link that you can click on. So you can either take a picture of the QR code, or you can click on the link that's going to be in the chat box. When you do that, you're going to see a little checkbox. If you want to receive 1 email a month from me, I share stories of encouragement and inspiration and just human connection that I've uncovered through my family and through life. I'd encourage you to check that box, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And lastly, I created these gratitude books. They're a great way to step into gratitude. I believe that a heart of thanks and praise is a great way to create connection with ourselves before we jump into notifications from our phone. So I'm going to give away 25 gratitude notebooks to this audience. And the way I'm going to give those away is if you email me at hello@markostach.com. Email me what you're grateful for and one thing you learned from today's message. What you're grateful for and one thing you learned from today's message. Thank you so much for your time today. It was an honor to address you all. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. And remember to be intentional. Thank you very much.
Well, I truly enjoyed Mark's talk, and I hope you did too. I'll bet you never thought we'd have a live donkey at GCM. Thanks again, Mark, and especially Mambo. What a great day with wonderful presentations from our executives, business unit leaders, and our guest speaker, Mark Ostach. Please remember to join us in approximately 10 hours for the virtual GCM Awards celebration. We'll see you there.
Lost your head, lost your hope, but you found a way to stay afloat. No, they didn't.